I'm Hilary Lindsay. I'm the chair of CLL Support, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to tell you what we've been doing with our STAR group since we first got involved towards the end of 2023. So when we started, we just knew, we had a big discussion at our trustee meeting in December 2023. We knew we wanted to be more proactive about our involvement in patient and public involvement and engagement. People were getting in touch with us, asking us if we would help in particular ways, but we didn't really feel that we were doing what was best for our community. We were very much being reactive and we wanted to be proactive. So the STAR initiative was born. We didn't know it was going to be called STAR until we had one of our early meetings. And at the early meeting, we were talking about what's this all about? And we talked about studies, we talked about trials, we talked about research, and we came up with an interim acronym. You have to have acronyms in the medical world, an interim acronym of STAR for what we were doing. And would you believe it stuck? And so it's now a permanent name for what we're doing in this particular area. And you can see that it stands for studies, trials, and research. Over a year later, this is still very much work in progress. It actually is a slide that we used at our London conference last year in 2024 to talk about this. But what we have done is identify 5 particular areas that we want to be involved in around this whole initiative. They all build towards the one at the top, which is recognising that as the charity in the UK that's there just for people with CLL and SLL, we have an opportunity to take a lead in this space on behalf of our 3,500 members and the many more thousands of people who have been diagnosed with CLL or SLL. And in doing that, we identified 4 areas we wanted to be involved. We wanted to get our members together. We wanted to convene you and involve you in what we were doing. We wanted to inform you with what was happening in this particular space, what was happening around patient and public involvement and engagement. We wanted to make connections with other bodies so that we were in a position to make a difference. And then finally, we wanted to promote what matters to the CLL and SLL patient and partner community. And I'm going to take you through each of those 4 areas that together lead to the ultimate aim of what we're trying to achieve. And I want to begin by talking about promoting what matters to us. And we felt it was really important to actually find out, first of all, what matters to all of you, all the people with CLL, all the members of CLL Support. And we've been doing this in 2 different ways. We've been doing it through our 2 yearly surveys that we do. So we have 3,500 members. We had 1,100 responses to our last 2 yearly survey. So that was really, really useful feedback. And we've been also sending out one-off surveys around topics such as what did you feel like when you were diagnosed with CLL? And what are your thoughts about shared decision-making? Just 2 examples that we then used to inform sessions that we were running. So we've been finding out what matters. And what we very much found out that mattered was fatigue. Absolutely. If we look at our surveys, this is the side effect, the symptom that more than half of you report, whether you are on active monitoring or on treatment or in remission, having undertaken treatment. We also discovered that the quality of life was a really big issue. Fascinating discussions around, do you want to have a better quality of life, but maybe not be quite so free of your CLL condition? Or do you want to have a better remission from your CLL, but with side effects that mean that in the meantime, your quality of life is quite badly affected? There's no right or wrong answer to this. Everything about CLL is different for each person and for their partners. And so we very much recognise that quality of life is up to individuals. But what we want to do is be able to point out that quality of life matters to our members very much as alongside the outcomes of the treatments that we might be undergoing. And then the fourth area we wanted to explore was, what does good look like about patient and public involvement? And we had the opportunity to talk to a venerable group of CLL clinicians last year, and we wanted to use the opportunity to talk to them about what matters to us. And so our STAR group is only a small group. There's half a dozen of us, trustees or associates of CLL Support. We've been supported from the start by Dr. Ben Kennedy, and now we're being joined by Dr. Piers Patton. So they're both really well respected experts in the whole area of CLL treatment, and it's enabled us to make sure that we're fitting in the right way and making the most impact with what we're trying to do. So before we had the opportunity to talk to them about what we were doing, we asked ourselves, what do we all think matters most about public and patient involvement? So each of us on the group, there happened to be 5 of us, were allowed to come up with the one thing that mattered most to us. And then we put them together. We put them on the fingers of a hand, and we were then taking them off to our presentation where we could say, this is what matters to us. We don't know what the relevant things are from the perspective of the clinicians about what matters to them, but this is what matters to us. And these are the qualities, the values that we will be looking for in any involvement that we participate in around this area. And the points we came up with were, first of all, that PPI needs to be embedded and costed. So it needs to be involved in any research right from the very beginning. And if there's a cost involved in collecting patients' views in any way, that cost needs to be put into the budget. So this is a part of it from the very start. It very much needs to be a respectful partnership. You can't have the one without the other. Clinicians would be in a bad place if there were no people with CLL to treat. People with CLL to treat would be in a bad place without the clinicians to help treat it. So we both need each other, and we both need to recognise that that partnership is one of mutual respect. Then another key point that had been coming through to us all the way through our deliberations was the importance of communication. Whether you were on a clinical trial and it was what you were being told about how the trial was progressing, or whether it was more generally about just knowing what was happening out there and how you were being told about it. But effective communication to us is really, really important. And within that, the communication needs to be communication that we as patients and not as expert clinicians can understand. So we have done some work previously about plain English versions of various papers. And we very much are involved now in making sure that anything that's developed around trials and in that area is absolutely understandable to patients when patients are being asked to read documents and take decisions based on what the documents say. The fourth important point we've had on our 5 fingers was about responding to patient need. And for us, this is critical. We don't really want new treatments to be developed if they aren't solving a problem that we think we have. And we're so fortunate now in the treatments that are available for CLL and SLL. They're fundamentally transformed from what were available just a decade ago. And so we have more choice in what's available, but therefore it's important that what's available, now we have that choice, can respond to what patients need. And each patient might have different needs. There are obvious issues around, do you take treatment for a particular length of time or do you take an ongoing treatment? There are issues around, do you feel you want to be going to hospital regularly as part of your treatment, or would you sooner be able to carry out your treatment from home? So all sorts of issues around patient need. And then the 5th point we had on this slide is around, it's not just about giving us remission from our CLL condition. It's about including quality of life. And this word encompassing, we chose carefully. It just does matter so much that people have a good quality of life while they have that, or as good a quality of life as they can have while they are being treated for their CLL condition or while they are on active monitoring before they need treatment. So those were the 5 areas we came up with, and those were the key things that we felt mattered to us. And they're very much the points that we have been pushing as if we're helping with public and patient involvement. These are our criteria, if you like, our red lines. These are what mattered to us. And then the second area I wanted to talk to you about was the area around connecting to influence. And it's amazing how much we've managed to do in just over a year. We knew what we wanted to do. We knew we wanted to be involved with early input into any research that was being considered or into any clinical trials that were being planned. And we've been able to do that. For example, we've been able to give letters of support for 2 trial proposals that recently both were received funding and are able to go ahead. So that was very exciting for us. We've been very involved working with Dr. Bartlett at the University of Surrey. So I mentioned earlier quality of life, and fatigue is a huge issue around that. And he's been doing work around the impact that exercise might have on fatigue and frailty. We've been very involved in trying to help make that research happen. We've given you opportunities to apply to take part in the research. And we've been supporting papers that they've written and requests for funding that they've put through. So we're very much looking at, can we get involved at the early stage of any developments? And we were delighted to be asked by the UK CLL Forum, I'll come on to them just now, to actually comment on the proposed guidelines, new version of the guidelines that are being developed for treatment into CLL. So we were just so pleased that we as patients were able to have a say in what we felt the treatment guidelines ought to be saying. And we very much appreciated that opportunity. So the UK CLL Forum is the group that those specialising clinicians, scientists, researchers specialising in CLL will belong to. It has various activities and meetings and a website you can see a picture of here. But in particular, it has an executive group that meets twice a year. It has about 35 people on it from across the country. I sit on that as a chair of CLL Support. And it's a real privilege to be involved with that and be able to share what we're doing and interact with the forum in a very positive way. And within the forum, there is a trials group that looks at all the trials that are taking place around CLL and SLL across the UK. It brings together all the clinicians who can then work out how they can best collaborate with the trials that they're running, how they can best take forward new ideas, how they can use what they know to help make further differences for our community. And now very much we've got the opportunity to contribute to those discussions and to say, well, from the patient point of view, patient and public point of view, these are the sorts of things that we think matter. Another key area where we have influence is with the pharmaceutical companies. So they give us grants to fund our educational programs each year, for which we're extremely grateful. But we also liaise with them. They need to understand the situation of patients and the experiences of patients, regardless of what drugs they are providing. And we only work with pharmaceutical companies that are producing drugs that are relevant to the CLL and SLL communities. But regardless of what drugs they're providing, they're all interested in how can we make the patient experience better, and how can we help our teams understand what it's like to be a patient with CLL or SLL. And so we spend quite a lot of time working with them to help bring the patient voice to their considerations. We've also been providing feedback on research proposals. So one or two people that are involved with their doctorates have been saying to us, what do you think about this proposal? And we can tell them how we think it sounds from the patient point of view. We're very careful not to exceed our brief and stray into the medical areas, of course. But we underestimated our danger, the power of putting forward what patients think. And it never ceases to surprise me how some of the most obvious things that we say just haven't necessarily been thought about by people that are doing a different job in a different context as clinicians or researchers. We're keen to develop our reputation. Talking to you in this recording is one way of doing that. And also the survey we did last year, we've developed an academic paper that we're seeking to get published. So that leads on to the next point. And then finally, we're very keen to keep on learning. It was emphasized so much to us by one of our members, how important it is for us to keep on developing our knowledge and our understanding as the STAR group. And indeed, we're looking to do that more widely with our community, but to help us have a better understanding of what's happening. So, for example, we're keen to sit in on a research ethics committee, which is where research proposals are considered and where the patient and public input that has to be in every research proposal now, or it won't go anywhere at all, how that's considered and looked at by the people reviewing proposals. We were also fascinated to talk to Professors Chris and Andrea Pepper, who were able to talk to us about a really early stage public and patient involvement group they have at their hospital, where whilst they're even doing work in the lab and nowhere near patients, they're still finding out whether what they're doing is of interest to patients. So we've got a good range of connections where we can help to influence what's happening. And the third of the four areas I want to talk to you about is about convening and involving. So convening means getting together all the people with CLL and SLL, and involving them means making sure that they're part of what we're doing and that we're representing all their views, not just the views of a small minority of us. So we have our conferences, we have our webinars. We've been running, our conferences will always include expert speakers. And so we pride ourselves on the range of voices that we bring to any conference program, from clinicians to clinical nurse specialists. So we make sure that we have people there, and patient stories, of course. We have voices there sharing across the board. And then our webinar program, which we're continuing to develop, never existed, of course, before the pandemic. But now here we are with a pretty full webinar program. And we, for example, had webinars about the flare and static trials that are going on, coordinated at the University of Leeds. And we recently had another webinar about the patient and the clinician perspective around clinical trials. And conferences, webinar presentations all end up on our website, so you can always go and have a look at them. We also have a new opportunity that some of you will know about, but not yet all of you. So we've just started a PPIE register. So this is a way of saying to all of you, if you're interested in this area, and 400 or so of you, when you did our survey, ticked a box at the end saying you'd be interested in helping us develop research or input into research. So there's a small form, you can see a picture of what it looks like here, where you can tick a box to say you're interested in joining discussions about possible research activity or taking part in PPIE activities or engaging with pharmaceutical companies. And by ticking the box, that just gives us your details, your name, and it means if we have any opportunities, we can get in touch with you and say, would you like to take part in this? And you can, of course, say no. Any clinical trial, people can always opt out at any point in time, and our PPI register is on the very much the same basis. There's no obligation to do anything, but it's our way of trying to get a broader group of people that we can invite to input into the deliberations that we are having with pharmaceutical companies, clinicians, scientists about what's best for the patient community, the CLL and SLL community. And so the 400 of you have received an email inviting you to sign up. The rest of you, of our members, will all receive an invitation in our next newsletter, which will be going out shortly, where you can sign up. And then you can come in later on and update your details if you want to. And I think there's 10 or 11 questions on the questionnaire. It's a very short questionnaire. It's just to enable us to be able to ask if people particularly need to know about people that have had treatment or haven't had treatment, what age group they are, where in the country they live. There just might be particular characteristics that will help us provide PPI input even more effectively than we do at the present. So when you do get that, I do hope you'll all sign up to it. And then the final area we're involved with is we're wanting to make sure, if we're encouraging you all to get more involved in PPIE activities, that you all feel you know enough about what it's all about. So this isn't about taking part in a clinical trial. That's dealt with completely separately. This is about providing input into any developments that there are where the patient and public voice is needed to inform what is being developed with the potential to help our community. And so what we'll be bringing to you over the summer, we're planning to do it through a couple of webinars, is a sort of a mini training course for PPIE, so that you can come along to that and then you'll know more about what it all involves. And of course, as with all our webinars, we'll be recording that. So if you can't come along on the day, you can, of course, see the recording afterwards. So this is very much in development. It's about having a new page on our website. So we've already got information on our website about clinical trials and so on. But what we're wanting to do is have a new page that's got on it information about what is STAR, details about trials, how to get involved in PPIE, information about the register, updates on what we're doing, and an FAQ section. So that's very much work in progress, but we've just been transitioning our website, so can't do everything at once. So this is our Q2 initiative that we're working on this. I'm delighted to have had this opportunity to share with you what we've been doing in this area. So now, if I may, I'll hand it over to somebody who will be able to facilitate questions from you.